This game is perhaps the most relentless attack on the f7 square I have ever seen in a game of chess. It is spooky, mysterious, and brutal the way Mikhail Tal uses the pressure on that one square. It looks impossible, almost like it won't work at all, but at the end, boy, does it ever. His opponent is the great Yuri Averbach, a grandmaster, one of the great teachers of chess, famous for writing an endgame series, among other things. This was played in 1961 at the USSR Team Championship in Riga. Let us jump right in. Tal has white, Averbach has black. Tal begins with e4, e5 knight f3 knight c6, and the Spanish opening, or the Ruy Lopez, is played. a6, bishop to a4. Black plays knight to f6, castles, bishop to e7, and rook to e1 to defend the e4 pawn. b5, bishop to b3, and d6. So far, very standard stuff, leading to a mainline Ruy Lopez. Now c3 from white. The idea is when the knight goes to a5, the bishop can tuck away at c2 and not be captured. The bishop is a much better minor piece than the knight is. And also, it supports a d4 push from white. Castles and h3, keeping a piece out of g4, particularly a bishop that could pin the knight and help restrain and put pressure on white's center because the knight defends d4. So knight a5 from black, the bishop does tuck away at c2, c5 gaining space, and then white plays d4. Tal gets his share of central space, and queen to c7. Again, all standard stuff. The queen aids in the defense of e5, and also if the c file opens, the queen is prepared to put pressure down that file. Knight b to d2, beginning a famous maneuver of knight f1, e3, or g3. And now here, white could play d5, and so black plays knight to c6 before that move is played, because otherwise the knight might get locked out with d5. And here, Tal, instead of playing d5 here, which is a playable move, it's a good move, he plays the move dc5. And this is Bobby Fischer's favorite move in this position. And after dc5, we have what is known as the focus formation. So what's the interesting distinctive quality of this formation? We've seen it quite a bit on this channel. The distinctive issue is that white has a weak square on d5 that it can put a piece on, or particularly a knight cannot move to d5. But black does not have the d4 square to take advantage of because the pawn at c3 controls that. So it gives white a nice square. Black does not have a good square. In fact, the best black can hope for would be to play c4, then knight d7, c5, d3, which is very hard to execute. It takes a very long time. It's not very likely that black can succeed in doing that. So knight to f1. Tal begins that process of the knight maneuvering its way to d5. Rook to d8. Makes a lot of sense, right? One open file, gains a tempo against the queen, but in many ways, this is the beginning of Averbach's trouble, because the rook now no longer defends the f7 square. Here's our f7 square. It's no big deal yet. Queen to e2, obviously moving away from the attack. g6, very standard idea again, so the bishop can maneuver its way back to g7, maybe put some pressure on the center, at least defend the e5 square. Knight to e3, Tal aims at that weak d5 square we were talking about. Rook to b8, maybe you can gain space with b4 with a push. And here Tal plays knight to g5. Now, if I were playing in a tournament, let's say I'm playing in a tournament, I forgot to look at the chart before the game started, and I didn't know my player's rating, and they played this move against me, I would think it wasn't a very good move. It's attacking f7, but it's not doing anything there. I mean, f7 is sufficiently defended. There are no other pieces that are attacking f7 or even look like they can attack f7 anytime soon. I mean, if the bishop goes to b3, it can just be blocked with c4. Nevertheless, the pressure Tal creates on f7 from this point forward is pure mysticism. I mean, they called him the Wizard of Riga, and this game is being played in Riga. It's games like this that he earned that moniker. Bishop to f8, going to g7 as we mentioned. Now queen to f3, attacking the knight. At the moment, the knight's undefended. It will be defended in a second. adding an extra piece to put some pressure on f7. Nothing to be too afraid of for black just yet, but bishop to g7 defends the knight. Now knight to d5. Okay. So black would like to take that knight. The problem is, if he takes it now, this knight doesn't have a good square to go to. He can go to the side of the board at a5, and this is what computers preferred for black. If he tried to keep it centralized by playing knight to e7, well, what happens? Yeah, f7 then, it's over. Queen f7, and white would just win from that position. So because of that, Averbach plays the move queen to d6. I mean, the knight was hitting the queen, and he has to defend this knight also. So queen to d6 is played, and here Tal plays bishop to e3. So what he's trying to do is overload the queen. By attacking the c5 pawn, he wants to put the queen in a position where it has to defend too many things at once, and so the pressure becomes unbearable. Averbach plays h6. Now this looks like a good move. This knight doesn't really have anywhere to go. Looks like it's trapped. Is he just winning a piece here? I mean, that's why, this knight at g5 was just sitting there. Well, watch what Tal does. He takes on f6. Now, the best move here for black is actually queen takes f6, but there's a reason why he didn't play that. Because after queen takes, bishop takes, knight to f3, we see Tal is attacking c5 and h6. He's going to win a pawn here. The game's not over. Black can still fight, but Averbach wants to avoid this. So instead, he takes with the bishop. But now rook a to d1 hits that queen. The queen has to stay in contact with the bishop and the c5 pawn because Tal has set up this overload position. So the queen goes to e7. Now bishop takes c5. If the queen takes the bishop at f6 will hang. Averbach makes a decision here. He decides to exchange rooks first. Maybe that's not the best decision. It probably doesn't matter. But in this situation, now Tal has complete control of the d file. So Averbach goes ahead and takes that bishop at c5, thinking, well, this knight is still hanging. Tal takes on f6, and pawn takes knight. And after all of that, Tal still only has one piece attacking f7. It looks easy to defend, and no big deal. And black's up a piece. Turns out he's lost. But the pressure on f7 is absolutely devastating after this next move. Bishop to b3. Notice there's no pawn to block the diagonal now. And the threat is queen f7 followed by queen to g8 mate. And there is no good defense for black. It's unbelievable. If he plays a move like, say, bishop to e6, trying to, just rook to d7, and the threats of mate lead to a complete win for white. So Averbach plays, as good a defensive move as any. Rook to b7, defending the pawn laterally. But now Tal plays queen takes g6 check, which he can do because the pawn is pinned by the bishop at b3. King goes to f8, queen to h6 check. Now, if the king goes to g8, Tal has this powerful move, rook to d6, attacking the knight and threatening to go to g6 with the rook. If the knight goes to a5, then boom, rook to g6 is checkmate because the pawn is pinned. That's just a mate. If the knight instead goes to e7 to guard g6, rook to d8 is mate. So because of that, Averbach does not go to g8. He goes to e8. Now rook to d5. The rook hits the queen, but the queen has to stay in contact with this knight because the queen is attacking it. And if Averbach loses his extra piece, the game is over because Tal has two pawns, too much of an advantage otherwise. So he plays queen to b6. The problem is now the bishop at c8 is undefended. After queen h8 check, king to e7, queen takes c8. Averbach resigned. Just a tremendous example of pressure on f7 that is almost looks mysterious. After all of that, just bishop to b3, and that was it. A really beautiful, beautiful game from the great Mikhail Tal. I hope you enjoyed it. See you again soon at Chess Dog. Goodbye.